Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 136. Go ahead. Jump. It's you, the film star. Sam Kello's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. He seemed to have completely forgotten that he was standing on the rooftop and was going to jump off a building just a second ago. "Why are you here?" he asked. "I hope I'm not dreaming, am I?" He'd heard that your life flashes before your eyes when you die. Maybe it was because he admired action movies so much that he was hallucinating the film star at this moment. "Yes, it's me, Sam Kello," James said as he carefully approached the ledge. "Didn't you ask me to call you when I came to Cape Town? You said you would show me around." James was also surprised. As soon as he reached the roof, he recognized the person who was going to jump as the tourist he'd met on Blaha Island who admired him. He was shocked beyond words. What a coincidence. The man he met on the island was now on the verge of committing suicide. Sam Kello sighed deeply. "I'm sorry about this," he said. "It's a long story." Raymond Martin was the first to react when he saw an unfamiliar man intruding on the situation. "Hey, who are you?" he called out. "What are you doing?" As he shouted, the others on the roof took notice. "Stop!" one of the police officers yelled. "You shouldn't be over there with him." All the West Group executives were panicking. The roof of the building was as chaotic as the company itself. A month ago, the corporation had been bought by an unfamiliar big shot, but the new chairman had yet to show his face and take charge of things. The entire company was in the midst of restructuring and integration. Many of its subsidiary companies were under threat of downsizing and eventual closure. At the same time, many positions in the main office would definitely be eliminated. It was complete bedlam. The employees were panicking, wondering if they were going to lose their jobs. The company's stock price was cratering. Now, if a manager of a West Group subsidiary committed suicide at corporate headquarters, the consequences would be unimaginable. West Group could not withstand any more pressure. It would totally collapse. When the corporate executives saw James approaching Sam Kello, they panicked and thought he was up to no good. They wanted to rush over and stop him before he did anything that would risk the company or the man's life. The negotiation experts from the police department were not as muddle-headed. There were 4 of them, 3 men and a striking blonde-haired woman. Her name was Elisa, and she was in charge of the team. She instantly saw what was happening and sprang into action. "Shh!" She put her index finger to her mouth and gestured to everyone to keep quiet. Even though she had no idea who James was and couldn't see his face clearly, she did see a trace of relaxation in Sam Kello's eyes as they spoke. She couldn't hear what the 2 of them were saying, but based on her many years of experience, there was one thing she was sure of. Sam Kello trusted this person. Negotiations were based on trust. Every time she went out to negotiate, her goal was to gain the trust of the troubled person who wanted to commit suicide or engage in some other extreme behavior. Once trust had been established, it was much easier to control the situation and lead it toward a favorable outcome. This trick of hers had always worked wonders. That was why she signaled everyone to stay put and observe James's actions. If they mucked up a successful rescue in progress, it would be a tragedy, and an avoidable one. She did not want that, as someone's life was at stake. Ray Martin watched James getting closer and closer to Sam Kello. He then looked at Elisa. His eyes were anxious. He didn't understand what was going on in the lady's mind. "Ma'am, I am afraid this is inappropriate," he said. "We don't know this person at all. What if—" He was immediately cut off by another member of the negotiation team. "Shut up," the officer said curtly. "Melissa's managed more crisis situations than you've played rounds of golf. She knows her job." Elisa was grateful for the backup. She was a well-known negotiation expert throughout all of South Africa. In the last 3 years alone, she talked 55 people out of committing suicide. This was a dazzling success rate. People had no choice but to follow her judgment and trust her instincts. Everyone on the roof was beginning to feel suffocated by the stress. It seemed as if it was difficult to breathe. Only Elisa had a twinge of confidence. She did not know why, but she had an inexplicable trust in whoever this guy was speaking with the jumper. James was paying no attention to what was happening behind him. His focus was solely on Samkello. He walked until he was less than 10 feet from Samkello. The group on the roof held their breath. They didn't know how he was going to persuade Samkello to change his mind from jumping. What James said next made all of them shocked and want to jump right along with him. To be honest, he said, I don't mind you jumping off the building. It has nothing to do with me. The roof of the West group was as quiet as a crypt. Only James's voice echoed in the air. Elisa couldn't believe her mistake. She was regretting her decision. She had gotten too careless and now someone might die because of it. She felt the eyes of her team members on her. The situation was nerve-wracking. The West Group team moved forward, desperate to try anything to prevent this nut from botching the situation. This time, Elisa and her officers didn't try to stop them. But James was too close to Samkello now. Nobody dared to get any closer. Episode 137. If you want to know, you have to ask me out. Ray Martin was so anxious he thought he was going to have a heart attack due to the tension surrounding in the air. The whole atmosphere on the rooftop had become extremely suffocating. At his wit's end, he tried threatening James. "This is murder," he said. "I advise you to retreat now, or else you will bear the consequences of what happens here." James turned a deaf ear to his hollow threat. He understood that the guy was just anxious because of the situation. He looked at Samkello, whose eyes had dimmed after hearing what his hero had said. James took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. "I'm telling the truth," he said. "Jump if you must. I really don't care." The words cut Samkello to the core. It felt as if his last shred of hope had been taken away from him. "Even you don't care?" he asked in a daze. He thought James was here to save him, but now he knew he was being naive all along. Why would he care if he was alive or dead? He was a nobody to him after all. James blew out a big smoke ring and said, "Of course I don't." After he scattered the ring with his hand, he continued, "Because whether you jump or not, the sun will still rise tomorrow morning. Nothing will change. Everything will go on as it used to. Because whether you jump or not, the entire company will run as usual tomorrow. It won't go bankrupt because you jumped off the building. Because whether you jump or not, your wife will continue to live her life, as well as your daughter. Sure, they'll be sad for a while because of your sudden departure, but they'll carry on. Your wife will remarry in order to maintain her quality of life, and who could blame her? You won't be around to help her. And your daughter will go with her and live under someone else's roof. It won't be your roof because you jumped off a building and died." Samkello couldn't take it anymore. "Enough," he shouted, because now he truly was afraid. And this time it was not the fear of death. He was afraid the scenes that James described would really come true. "Give me a cigarette," he said. James sauntered up to him and held out his pack, as if they were two strangers sharing a smoke at a bus stop. Samkello took the cigarette and James lit it for him. He then looked at the distraught man and said, "It's always better to live than to die. There are always solutions to our problems. I don't have any obligation to help you, but I feel like we've become friends since we've met. So tell me what's troubling you. Maybe I can help." In fact, before anyone noticed James on the roof, he'd heard the conversation between Samkello and Raymond. That was how he knew this matter was most likely related to business. And now, he was the boss of the place. If this was something he could solve, he definitely would. Samkello took a deep drag on his cigarette, then chuckled a little and shook his head. "It would be great if you could, but I'm afraid you can't help me with this." James just shrugged. Perhaps the situation is not as bad as you think. Seeing the two of them talking and laughing, the others on the roof were stunned with the sudden change in the guy's demeanor. They did not know what to do. Ray Martin didn't know whether to stay or leave. He looked like a helpless lost puppy. Elisa was staring at James with shining eyes. This guy really was amazing. He had approached the jumper so easily and got him to relax so quickly. How did he do it? She was in awe of James's persuasive skills. Elisa's colleagues were all looking at her. They had never seen their leader like this. They were all wondering if this usually stern police commander had taken a fancy to the strange man. When he'd finished his cigarette, Sam Kello couldn't help but open up to James. "All right, here's the deal. Not only is my company bankrupt, I'm also in debt up to my eyeballs." James didn't ask any unnecessary questions and got straight to the point. "Who's the creditor?" he asked. "West Group," Sam Kello said with difficulty, gritting his teeth. James burst out laughing after hearing this. Sam Kello was confused. Ray was confused. Even the negotiation expert Elisa was confused. "What are you laughing at?" Sam Kello asked. James didn't say anything. He only shook his wrist slightly. Somehow a document appeared in his hand. He put a brotherly arm around Sam Kello's shoulder and showed it to him. After he read it, he started laughing right along with James, making the others curious about the contents of the document. His arm still around Sam Kello's shoulder, James led him away from the ledge and they walked down the stairs together as if there was no one else around. Ray Martin was beside himself. "They're crazy. They really are two lunatics." Elisa ignored the company executive and hurried down the stairs after them. She politely stopped James and said, "Hello, sir. May I ask you a question?" He didn't say anything. He just signaled to her to go ahead. "I am very curious. What did you say to make him calm down so quickly?" He looked at Elisa and grinned. "Come here," he said flirtatiously, hooking his finger indicating for her to come closer. In the past, Elisa would have kicked him in the crotch to teach him how to behave in front of a high-ranking police official. But today, and she did not know why, she actually leaned her ear towards him. James put his mouth next to her ear and blew gently. Then he said, "If you want to know, you'll have to ask me out." Then he turned and continued down the stairs. Episode 138. Do I look like a bad person? James was in no hurry to ask Sam Kello anything else about the incident. Instead, he suggested he go home to rest and adjust his mood. The incident had been quite exhausting for everyone. After that, they agreed to talk in more detail. It was not that James wasn't curious. It was because he hadn't officially taken over West Group yet. So he was not confident enough if meddling in the matter at the moment would be beneficial. He could tell already that there were a lot of problems within the company. He was afraid there would be a lot of things he needed to do after taking charge of the company. Before moving back up with Vanessa, Katie, and Krista, he still had one more thing to do, and that was to make an important phone call. He needed to contact the secretary and arrange a meeting with all the stakeholders, so as to know what was exactly going on in the company. The phone number for the former chairman's secretary was on the equity transfer documents. Her name was Phyllis. After parting ways with Sam Kello, James found a relatively quiet place and dialed the number of the chairman's secretary. The phone rang only a few times before it was picked up. A pleasant and polite female voice came from the other end. "Hello, this is Phyllis. How can I help you?" "Yes, hello, my name is James Tucker, and..." Before he could finish, she interrupted him. There was a sense of urgency and excitement in her voice. "The new chairman of the board of directors who acquired 51% of West Group shares? My future boss, Mr. James Tucker?" He could imagine the expression on her face through the phone. "Yes, that's right." "Thank God you are finally here," she exclaimed. From her words and tone, it was not hard to tell how much she had longed for this mysterious new boss to appear. But then she seemed to realize she had lost her composure. She immediately adjusted her emotions and said, "I'm sorry, sir. Welcome to Cape Town. How can I assist you today?" James was impressed with how quickly she regrouped. Something that a professional would do. "Yes, there is something you can do for me. Please inform all the stakeholders to be in the corporate conference room in 20 minutes. I want to hold my first meeting with them." Phyllis heard him but didn't quite believe what she'd heard. "What?" was all she said. James' face darkened. He always liked things to be done cleanly and without delay. He respected all employees, including secretaries, but this was not a time for questions or opinions. She worked for a corporation, after all, not a think tank. "What's wrong?" he said a little unhappily. Is there a problem?" Phyllis immediately came to her senses. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tucker. I will arrange everything right away." James appreciated her quick reaction. He could tell she was good at her job. Outside the chairman's office at West Group, Phyllis put down the phone and let out a sigh of relief. Finally, the long-awaited new chairman had arrived. "Looks like this new chairman might have a bit of a temper," she muttered. "Let's just hope he can use it to tame the old guard." Then she started sending notifications to the other shareholders to come into the office. Now. Elisa rejoined her team on the roof. While her colleagues discussed the incident, she just stood there thinking about the incident. Although she saw the mischievous twinkle in the guy's eyes when he looked at her, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was really interesting. She was snapped out of it by one of her team members. "Whoa, does our boss like that guy or what?" "Shut your mouth," another officer said. Although he was one of Elisa's subordinates, he had been pursuing her unsuccessfully for 2 years. "Hey, Elisa, I think it's time for us to leave," he said. She was still a little dazed. Could this be so-called love at first sight? She muttered to herself. "Excuse me, what did you say?" one of them asked, not being able to make out what she whispered. She looked around and finally noticed they were the only ones left on the roof. She quickly recovered her usual professional manner. "Let's go," she said. When James walked out of the building, the police were taking down the barricades that had previously sealed off the block and were dispersing the lingering onlookers. He saw Vanessa, Katie, and Krista still standing in what was left of the crowd and quickly walked towards them. That's when he passed the 2 policemen who'd stopped him at the entrance to the building. One of them looked at him and said, "Isn't that the one who wanted to enter the building and then disappeared?" "Ah, yes, it's him," the other cop said. "Maybe he's a thief who snuck in during the chaos." "Let's check him out," his partner said. They moved quickly to intercept James before he could disappear again. "Hey, stop right there." James turned around and saw the 2 policemen. "Hello, officer. Are you talking to me?" he asked. The 2 officers positioned themselves in front of James. "We suspect you may have snuck into the building and stole something during the chaos." James just stared at them. He was speechless. How lowly did they think of him? "I'm not sneaking around. I'm swaggering around," he thought. However, because they were policemen, he could only grumble in his heart. Instead, he said very politely, "Officer, I think you're mistaken. I didn't steal anything. Besides, look at me. Do I look like a bad person?" "Yes, I think you do look like a bad person," one of the cops growled. The situation was deteriorating quickly. He needed to quickly think of something. At that moment, a pretty woman emerged from the entrance of the West Group corporate headquarters.